All right. Looks like we are starting. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm going to be talking about mastering data migration as a business analyst. So, what is that about? Mastering data migration as a business analyst? Well, I'll tell you what I mean and the scope of my presentation in a minute. But let me first introduce myself a little bit. So I'm Jean-Pierre. I'm a project manager at Texay. We are a French independent consulting partner with Salesforce. I am also a Paris Slack community chapter leader, and I've been in the Salesforce ecosystem for about 8 years now. I love the Salesforce ecosystem and especially the stickers. I've got a great collection. If you talk with me live someday at an event, we'll probably share stickers, I hope. And I almost love stickers as much as I love Olympique de Marseille. I'm from Marseille originally. I love football, and of course, I love the local team, Olympique de Marseille. And on my spare time, I also perform in plays. I've played about 18 times. Last play we performed, and I'm starting again next year. So it's a wonderful activity. If you're wondering, just get into theater yourself. It's a great activity. All right. So what are the objectives of today? We want to understand what's the BA's role in a data migration project. We want to know, okay, so a data migration project can be very daunting, it can be very technical, it could be like, the job of a developer because we are working on jobs and scripts in Talend or a Talend-like tool or something like that. But the BA can actually do so much, even though they don't have a technical background, they have only a functional background. They can help so much in a data migration project. We want to provide the right tools and deliverables in this session. Hopefully, you'll get some new stuff that you didn't know before the presentation. And if you do want to share about tools yourself that you use and that you don't see here, please do so. I'm always open to sharing new ideas and tools that I can in turn use myself. And I'll try and share some lessons that I've learned with you and the common pitfalls I've encountered in my experience as a business analyst, as a project manager working on data migrations. Remember, even if you're a junior business analyst, a junior admin, and even though a data migration project might seem very, very difficult and daunting, remember that you can do it. It's okay to feel that something is just like too much to handle at the beginning. You just have to get into it. You just have to take it piece by piece, task after task, and hopefully with that session, with some experience and the experience of others around you, if you haven't done any data migration projects, well, you'll just do great, and of course learn on the job as well. That's part of it. So the data migration context I want to talk about is that in typical projects we're going to have a CRM overhaul. Like I'm on a legacy system which is aging not quite well, and we want to switch to Salesforce. One of the typical projects we also encounter where there is a high stake for data migration is a system merge. Basically, after several mergers and acquisitions, for example, you're going to want to merge your CRM systems all together into one Salesforce, into maybe a new org or an existing org. And obviously, there is also the good old, legacy cleanup. You got some data that you're using in one system, you want to put it in another system, even though your Salesforce org has been around for long. So obviously, you're going to have to deal with some data migration there. And the business takes that we need to put an emphasis on is obviously the data quality. We want to make sure that that data is reliable, and we want to make sure that it's high quality. It's we can trust it. There is also an issue of traceability. because especially when you work in a European context or American context, maybe even some other context which are similar about the GDPR, you want to make sure that you keep that traceability of personal data, leads, contacts, and so on. And obviously, you want it to be usable because, especially when you change systems, you're going to be migrating data that is being used by your sales reps. For example, on a Thursday, you cut over on that Thursday night, you do the data migration. You want that data to be usable on Monday morning, because business doesn't wait. And those sales reps, they're going to have to take on those quotes and orders they've been working with, and they will need to move forward and actually validate those deals that were, in the old system. So it's very important that we make sure that the data migration is not, well done in itself. We need the data to be usable, and we need to think in broader terms of, okay, what are users going to do with the platform once it's loaded with the features and the data. And so in that role, you can understand that the business analysts are actually very, very useful. They're going to be the bridge between business, IT, and integrators, especially because they're going to be able to gather requirements, facilitate collaboration, and they're going to be also managing the change of one system to another data-wise. And really, the business analyst in that sense is, the owner of the business coherence. And when it comes to data migration project, and any project actually, you should never forget about Hofstadter's law. And for those not familiar with Hofstadter's law, it basically goes as a task is always going to take longer than expected, even though you take into account Hofstadter's law. So, with that being said, I wanted to tell you, plan ahead and, be careful about timing and budget. But then, some things might happen. It's always like that. And you have to remind your stakeholders of this, and you have to, make sure that you have a contingency plan. Of course, you need to make sure that you have all of the right resources able to help you if something goes south, because, it can always happen. So my own experience with data migration, I've actually had, I guess, a very broad spectrum of data migration experience in my projects. I've migrated data prepared by others, and I had to analyze the results. And so I did that because I was not responsible for the data at all, and I just had to load it. It was a quick load, so I did that with Inspector Reloaded. We'll come back to that tool in a minute. It's very useful. I've also prepared and migrated data myself because the client was expecting us to do that. They just didn't have the time, and they gave us a responsibility to do this, even though it's going to be very rare in projects. Nowadays, normally the client is responsible for their data, and they just give you the file and you load them. So I did that with Excel and Inspector. I've also just gathered requirements and drafted the documentation for a developer to load, because it was such a technical project and such a big project that I had that very let's say, I was really centered on doing that BA stuff. And if we can actually maybe reduce the BA part of the data migration project, maybe it's going to be about gathering requirements and drafting documentation, and of course maybe down the road analyzing results. But the very, very bare minimum for a BA role in a data migration, according to me, would be that requirements gathering and that documentation. I've also worked on cleaning and reconciling data because the legacy systems were such a mess and nobody else could do it. For example, I've worked on Pipedrive and Monday, gathering all that in Excel, working a lot with XLOOKUP. Maybe at the time it was even VLOOKUP because XLOOKUP didn't exist yet. And then uploading all that with Inspector. Obviously, I've also managed data migration tasks as a project manager, following up on what everybody was doing. And I've also, and that's much more, I guess, maybe original, I've had prepared talent jobs. So I was basically working with the developer, working on what objects were involved in that talent job, and what specific rule we needed to take into account in order to import properly. And I've also actually executed them because I was the one actually doing the cutover job. So on that Thursday evening or that Friday morning, for example, I was hitting the execute button and, crossing my fingers, hoping that everything goes well, because otherwise, I'm not the developer. There is no way I can actually go into that script and change it. Of course, there are things you can do that are outside of the scope of, developing in that sense. And that's also why, as a BA, you should be involved in a data migration job. So, we're talking about AI these days, and obviously AI is relying on good data, That's what everybody has been saying. I mean, obviously AI is going to change the way we work and the way we develop, but, AI can't fix bad data, and it's really about, that data that you put into your system. If it's bad data on one end, it's going to be bad data on the other end. And so you don't want to have bad data in your system. That goes without saying for any system nowadays. And wait, if we are talking about this right now, then it's even more paramount that you make sure that you have great data when you migrate it. So data migration is actually one big opportunity for you to actually maybe start with a clean slate and clean your data and have a very nice data migration load to start with your new system. So here is a data migration process, how I see it. I've put a little astro on some of those arrows, some of those steps to indicate where I think the data migration is going to require a business analyst, in my opinion. Please do share if you feel differently, or if you have some experience in the matter, or if you have any questions, of course. I haven't looked at the chat yet. Maybe I should. I don't know if, maybe nobody is writing in the chat yet. But please do feel free to communicate any way you can. I'll make sure I answer your questions and remarks. So obviously, the business analyst is going to be working on requirements. We're going to see how that goes in a minute. They are also being involved in the analysis, to my understanding, and some of them working on a more app building and admin job would also participate in the mapping of the data. Obviously, once you've done your requirements, once you have analyzed the data, you have mapped everything from the old system to the new system, you're going to want to extract that data, and then you're going to be cleaning it. Maybe. And we can really ask ourselves the question, is it really after extraction that you're going to be cleaning your data? You have to think about cleaning the data that you have in your legacy system from day one of your project. Cleaning your data does not require full requirements analysis to start. And really, it should be a parallel job done very quickly in your data migration project, because you don't want that to be in the critical path once you go ahead with your project, because it could take a lot of time. Deduplication is a hard job. There are, companies focusing on deduplication and data quality. So you want to work on that, or have people working on that very quickly in your project. After that, you're going to be transforming your data. Maybe you're not working with the same objects anymore. That's very likely because, you are improving, you are trying to innovate, you are trying to use some standard objects from Salesforce. So obviously, you're going to have some job in transforming that data from the old system to the new. Then you're going to load it. That's a very particular technical job that one might have to do, especially when it comes to writing script and executing jobs with talent, because of the sheer volume of data you have when you have millions of records to import, for example. And then, it's all going to be about testing. Okay, I've imported my data. Is it clean? Is it in the system at the good place, etc., etc.? The BA comes back into play here, definitely, because they are the ones who worked on those use cases before. And then obviously you want to showcase what you did, what you have accomplished. You have a nice 100% success rate on your data migration. You want to migrate, you want to show that migration to your stakeholders. So coming back to that very first step about understanding business needs, you need to ask yourself what business uses are going to be relying on that data. Data migration projects, just like any other IT projects, will require some user stories. It's not only about the feature, it's about what a user needs to do in order to achieve their business goal. So it's really going to be, also relying on those user stories and those specific business processes that users are either already accustomed to or that they're going to need to learn with the new system. And you need to make sure that your data is relevant. So what rules are those? So basic criteria could be, that it is useful in a business process and it is reliable, meaning that we know why we use this data and it's going to mean something for the user down the road. In that sense, you have to carefully select which object you're going to want to migrate. So it's very important that as a BA, even though you're not involved in the app building of Salesforce, and even less so in the development of Salesforce, you need to understand the importance of understanding the data model. It's key that you should review the data model for the legacy org, obviously, but especially for the target org, in Salesforce, to make sure that you understand which record are going to go where. You also want to ask yourself about the history of data. Are we going to take all of those, opportunities closed, open from 3 years ago? Is that really useful, depending on what the status of the account should be? Are we going to migrate all of those, sleeping accounts, even though they were clients someday? Is that really worth it, especially if there is many records about this? And please, whatever you do, avoid migrating everything by default. You don't want to do that. It's going to be so much energy, let's say, quote unquote, wasted. And it's, never wasted because it could always be useful. But you want to think in terms of 80-20. 80% of your job, or 20% of your job, rather, is going to determine 80% of the outcome. So you want to think smart, and you want to make sure that you are not focusing on too nitty-gritty details, because down the road, you will regret it, and it will just pile on with other things you need to do about the data migration. So the mapping, for those of you who don't know, the mapping is about that technical documentation to understand how your data is going to be transformed. You're going to have your source fields on one column and your target fields on another. And then you want to make sure that, the fields actually match each other, especially in terms of format and potential value transformation. When it comes to, for example, saying, okay, we are migrating a checkbox from one source system, it's going to be a fake Boolean field on the target system, for example. You need to make sure that those transformation rules, they are clearly written on the document. And again, it could be a little technical, and as a BA, not touching Salesforce itself when it comes to customization, you still need to be able, to understand everything, because it's going to determine, how change is going to operate from one system to another. And you want to be able to answer to those users who are affected by that change. Also, of course, big focus on standardization. You may have had 12 pick list values in one field on the old system. Maybe you can actually reduce that down to 3, 4, 5. So maybe it was even configured that way in Salesforce. So you need to make sure that you are able to take all of those values and transform them into the right values in the target system. Ideally, that could even be part of the cleanup that is done. That way, you actually don't have the developer to, develop that specific part of the script, which is always more work for them, and it might not be worth it. And very important, you need to have external IDs. So what is an external ID? It's basically one ID, one set of characters, one set, string field to be able to identify uniquely that specific record you are importing. And why it's important is because even though technically the system might not require it, when you work with some, let's say, declarative tools like Inspector, you still want to be able to use that to match data further down the road. You'll need it anyway to match data between parent and child records anyway. And you might want to do that because you want to retry things, you want to retry data load later. With tools like Talent, for example, or Talaxy now, which is a new open source fork for Talent, you will need external IDs anyway. The system will require you to take external IDs. Okay?
Jean-Pierre, I have a question.
Yeah.
For the technical documentation and mapping, you mentioned standardization. What kind of tools are you using for this other than Excel? Like to build artifacts like data dictionary and all these transformations, what kind of tool or platform you use?
You mean to document mapping?
Yep, exactly.
Oh, to be honest, I've only ever used Google Sheet or Excel. There might be some tools allowing you to do that more smartly online, but honestly, I've never seen that.
Yeah, that's why I asked the question.
Yeah, thanks. I know that there are some tools really about the data in the Salesforce ecosystem. We already know Inspector. There are also a couple of other tools I like, elements.org, for example, or Salesforce Dev Tools, Salesforce org optimizer as well, I think. Yeah, if I remember correctly. Those tools might have a plugin about this at some point. I'm not really sure, but yeah, that good old-fashioned Excel file is doing the job just perfectly. It's very easy to use. So yeah, I must say that I've never encountered any other tool for this in my projects. So yeah, speaking about those key business analysts deliverables, you've got that data dictionary. The data dictionary is really going to be what you feed into your mapping further down the road. So you want to make sure that you check it and you modify it or have it modified regularly in your project, because that way you're always up to date on those fields and what they are used for. Ideally, you also put in the data dictionary the rules that this field is used for, validation rules, flow, and so on. But it's always a bit hard because sometimes there are so many rules, so many automations a field could be used for. So this is especially where maybe a Salesforce extension on Chrome might come in very handy, because you want to see all of the dependencies of that field with other stuff in Salesforce. And then you take that data dictionary and you use it to build your mapping. And your mapping should not just be the data dictionary where you put things in front, or old source field in front. You really want to have a clean document, nice document, only stating what you're going to be importing so that it's very easy to read. Last but not least, one very, very important document is a validation, a test plan. I'm going to be talking about that in just a minute, but you want to make sure, again, that you're treating data migration just like any other feature you're implementing on your org. So you need to think in terms of, okay, with that data, what is the user going to do? How is that impacting my current features? And how are we going to be dealing with that in Salesforce on the day we actually go live with the platform? Key BA tools. We've mentioned Excel. I'm a big fan of Excel myself. We have the Google Work suite at TechSay, but I've just installed my personal Office suite, Office 365, because I'm such a fan of Excel. It's very, very powerful, and I've done a lot of work on data migration with that tool. Honestly, I think that Google can do the job just fine. I guess it's somehow personal. But yeah, I love how that XLOOKUP work in Excel. There is something similar in Google Sheet, obviously. And that XLOOKUP, if you don't know, really do try and use it. XLOOKUP is the new VLOOKUP, basically, and it's much more powerful. It's basically allowing you not to have such a structured, table. You don't have to, have one column after the other or stuff like that. It's really much more flexible. So do give it a go if you can with an example. That XLOOKUP is very, very important when you're going to be, matching data together, making sure that all of the data is there, making sure that you have all the right external IDs in your file. It's really going to be your bread and butter every day working on a data migration project. You also want to have a nice diagramming tool working with the ERD. So ERD, for those who don't know, I'm sure everybody have heard of ERDs before. It's entity relationship diagrams. Those are very important because that's how you're going to understand your data model visually. They're going to be showing you what are the different objects, what are the relationships, so mainly different one-to-n, one-to-many relationships, and also maybe those very particular relationships you can have between some of those objects. Salesforce is giving themselves a standard ERD, a standard data model for Sales Cloud, for Service Cloud. Do look that up. It can be very interesting to understand that with such a sophisticated data model. But if you can, make it simpler for your clients and for your stakeholders. I love to use draw.io. I think it's called now app.diagrams.net. But if you look it up online, you just put draw.io, it's going to redirect to the right website. It's so simple. It's so powerful to build some nice data models. Obviously, I've talked about Salesforce Inspector Reloaded many times already. It's an amazing tool. It's doing so much stuff, especially when you use it not only to load data, but also to check on your data and make sure that you have all of the right information at the right place. And in order to check on your data, so basically to query your data, you need to have some SOQL knowledge. It's not very complicated. Honestly, I myself have learned SOQL quite late, and you got so much resource online, and the very the commands are actually very simple. The first one, like select blah 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 any field from any object where, and then you put your criteria, your conditions. It's very useful when you want to make sure that some things are in the right place, or when you want to maybe gather those Salesforce IDs that you need to use for maybe linking them with some data to be uploaded. So cross-team collaboration. Obviously, the project manager is going to be involved a lot in that cross-team collaboration. But as a BA, you have a unique position to actually interact with everyone. Obviously, you should respect the RACI that is in place for your project. Maybe you could even be originating that document. So for all of you who don't know about the RACI, it's a document showing who is responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed for every task that you have to do on a data migration project. And it's really important because, as you saw, there are a lot of moving parts in this kind of project. You want to make sure that everyone knows their tasks and know what they are accountable for. Obviously, when you are in meetings, when you work with the business, you want to make sure that you get their priorities straight, and you want to understand the context. The context is going to be helping you understand the priorities and how they're going to be using data in the actual system, in actual life. It's always going to be about, okay, I'm working on quotes and orders. You have designed and built a very nice system there, but I've got a client on the phone and they're asking me this and they are doing that and so on and so on. So it's really important that you understand the context of what the sales reps is going through every day to make sure that your system is actually, life proof. Obviously, working with developers and data analysts or people working on the data side of things, you want to make sure that you understand feasibility and performance. It's especially true when it comes to knowing the requirements for the tool, for talent, for example, or so on. One very good example is that, in many instances in data migration projects, you're going to need a token, which is generated in Salesforce. You want to make sure that, if needed, you know how to generate a token, and you want to make sure that that token does not change, or at least that your developer knows about that change, because they're going to be using that data point in the context of their loads, of their jobs, and it's going to be very important because they just don't log in Salesforce and launch a job when they work on that. They are actually inputting that in their system. And so, they can't change it very easily like that. So it's very important that you understand what they need to work properly. And obviously, when it comes to QA, you want to send them targeted test scenarios their way. You want to make sure that they have the right test scenarios so that they can be focused on, really understanding what the data is for and how it's needed in specific use cases. It's very, very important. If you are lucky enough to have a quality insurance team, normally they will be very demanding about those targeted test scenarios, which is a good thing because it's how they work, it's their prime input. So they're going to be very demanding with you, but that's a good thing. And even though you wouldn't have such a team, you yourself as a BA, maybe working even on testing further down the road, you want to have targeted test scenarios with the right variables. You want to have that variability that you need in tests to be able to make sure that the system with that data is working properly. Okay, so testing the migration. As I said, I want to come back to that because it's very important as a BA to understand that you need to define business cases that are representative of everyday job. You want to make sure that basically the data that you're importing is working in the context of the feature, or even though the other way around, you want to make sure that the feature you have built is working on the context of the data you're importing. And you also want to make sure that you have different use cases of data you are importing. Maybe in some instance, you are missing some of that data somewhere, or you are actually not respecting validation rules for some features you have put in place. You need to make sure that you are reviewing all that. Of course, it can happen, down the road that users are blocked by that. But when you test, you actually know what your workaround is going to be, so that on that very first day, when you go live with the product that you're launching, with the data that you have migrated, if there is an issue you obviously could not, deal with on the data side, you at least know what to do when it comes to working around that and unlocking users and unblocking users. It can be about, assigning to yourself, just a bypass to use so that you can actually validate something. Maybe you want to communicate a workaround that everybody can use so that you don't have to spend too much time on things. It's very important that you check that data consistency and usability. And of course, just in terms of numbers of records, you're supposed to have migrated X number of records. How many do you have in the end? Is the right data in the right column? Is the data with the right format? And are the links between objects correct? About this, I need to tell you a quick story. Back a few years ago, we imported data for one of our clients, and obviously it was about opportunities, about that money that you want to have in Salesforce in your pipeline. And the imports were going very smoothly. Everything was okay, 100% success, and so on. And I've actually drafted the reports to check live with my developer the opportunities being imported. And I could see that, sorry, I had 100% success rate, but I had €0 value in my opportunities, zero pipeline, no value, so unusable at all. And that's because even though the import was very smooth, was very successful, there was actually an issue with the format in the tool that we used, which made it that we could import, but we didn't have any value in those currency fields that we use on amounts for opportunities. So obviously, not useful at all for users. And so we had to redo that in the light of that test that we did. And so you want to use those reports, please do that. You're going to be using, of course, Inspector with the data export to check on things, but also use Salesforce reports to test the data and to showcase your data. You could even think about building a very nice, dashboard of, maybe 1 or 2 items per object you're importing, to have about 10, 15 items in your dashboard, showing how many, records you have imported, showing how much value is the pipeline representing and stuff. So that way you can actually showcase and talk about your accomplishments in front of the executive committee or in front of super users and so on. Okay? Another very important thing, you need to document a lot. You need to understand what are the post-load files. So basically, a developer giving you the file with everything we imported, the file with all of the successes. Hopefully it's very high, it's very heavy, and the file with all of the errors. And you want that file to be very light, there may be a 0 or 2 bytes in terms of volume in your system. That means that there is no data in it. No data, that means 100% success. Because when you don't have a specific tool to do that, you will have to actually go ahead and trace all of those data and have that in a nice Excel or Google Sheet afterwards to say, okay, accounts imported, 10,000, accounts to be imported, 15,000. Why are we having a gap? How much is the gap? How much is the percentage? And so and so. Okay? And you need to, activate those errors and understand why they are so and what the developer, back, before you worked on things, maybe what was wrong with the data and so on. So in that reporting, you want to have that volumetry, you want to have the preload files, what were the original files. You want to keep that as an audit trail, and you want to have those post-load files that you also give to the stakeholders, to the managers working on the project. Very important, when you're going to be in those meetings about governance and traceability, meetings before, meetings during, meetings after, do take notes. One of your jobs as a business analyst is to make sure that the data is there, that everything is documented. So even though, we might expect a project manager to actually be accountable for this, ask yourself, who is taking notes? What are the owners of the tasks? What are the tasks themselves? Very, very important. And I'm telling you this for data migration projects, but obviously it works for all projects. Okay, we're going to be finishing with a few things that, it's not very obvious when it comes to data migration. So I want to make them more visible and that you actually, maybe go away with a few of those, ID things that you can actually use and think of when you're going to have those errors in Salesforce, or even to anticipate those errors. Be careful about the historical data and how you will need that for new processes, especially about contract renewals. I've got maybe an automation in my Salesforce to work on renewals in contracts. Do I have the right data to go with that? I am putting in place new validation rules. I should have that data when I arrive at that stage. Are you making sure that that data is actually there when you migrate the data? Because in that case, for example, it could be impossible for a user to change something in the org even though they are allowed to, because the validation rule is triggering too quickly. You also want to make sure that you understand how dates work on particular objects. I'm sure that some of you relate already. Orders, contracts, order items. Very important to understand the standard aspect of things there. Be careful about activity history, especially in terms of completed date. You can't modify that. If you import into Salesforce a task which is finished, it will have a completed date at the time of the export or at the time of the import. And you can't change that. It's very nasty. It's been a Salesforce ID for years. We don't know why it's still not there, but it's something you need to take into account because it's gonna, modify your data and it's gonna make it look a bit bad for users. So you want to plan ahead if you're actually migrating activity history. Notes, guys, don't get me started on notes. They are a pain to import because they need to have a very special format. You need to import them with the links as well. So that's actually 2 imports. And to top it all off, notes objects. So that's probably going to be maybe content version, technically speaking. And you see, it's even a nightmare to understand the data model of notes and content versions. They don't accept external IDs. You can't create a custom external ID fields on those objects so that you can actually do a very nice data load with the right tool with that. It's horrible. So you need to plan ahead. If you're hearing about notes to be imported because somehow there was some long text back in the old org and users want to have that in the new org, just ask yourself a question, is it really worth it? Okay. A very common one as well, inactive users needed as owners. We always had that because obviously old opportunities, we may want to keep trace of who users were actually working on those. They may have left the company. They will be as inactive users. And you actually, want to have the right permission to be able to insert records with inactive users, okay? And you also want to make sure that you identify data that has been imported. So of course you can always rely on who was the user that imported, what was the date. But honestly, guys, I prefer to just have a very specific field that I call technical source. And in that field, which is just a very simple text field with maybe 80 characters, I just put some nice, reference to the table I'm importing, maybe with the date even or stuff like that, to retrace everything and make sure that when I'm querying my data, I know what I need to look for. Okay. To conclude, just a little more best practices, and really in a nutshell, start early. Data migration project is no joke. You need to anticipate things. Keep it simple. Don't try to overcomplicate things and to take too much on and have too much of sophisticated use cases. And last but not least, as I was just saying, document everything. It's paramount that you have everything documented so that you can communicate properly in terms of user stories, mapping, and migration reporting as well. Okay? All right, guys. That's all for me. Thank you so much.
I have one comment, and thank you, Jean-Pierre and Christos, by the way. You can hear me both, right? Is the just one other thing to that, a comment, all right? When something that don't tell you is usually when we import data is maybe 1,000 records or 10,000 records, all right? But it happens to me to upload millions of records. Over there is a different game. Sometimes you need not to upload everything, but you need to group and summarize, usually for reports, analytics, or CRM or Tableau. So have that in mind. It's something that I can add on that, all right? I'm not sure if you ever have the experience to add millions of records to Salesforce, but sometimes you need to group them so you save space, and also don't use, for example, pick lists, use flat data, and the way you have to use the large data volumes over there. You have to even change the fields types in order to
Oh
be
yeah,
faster for reporting.
yeah, yeah. I understand. I actually never had so many data to import so many rows for only one object. My biggest data migration was 3.5 million records spread over maybe 15 objects. But yeah, for some B2C companies, very big companies, yeah, you're gonna have to work around very specific aspects, like you just said. That's a great input actually, and that's maybe one of the limits of my own experience is that I haven't worked on that big data migration. Yeah, sometimes you just need to be even more prepared than what I just said. It's a very good point. Yeah.
Yeah, usually most of I'm not sure how many people they have worked in Salesforce big objects, but usually just that case. But it's not every time. It's 99% of the data migration will be the standard, what you share. It's just an extra add-on on that in case if somebody, or usually it's on analytics, all right, when you want. And I guess it will be the future with data cloud, something that we need to, it's something to consider from now on.
Definitely, yeah. Thank you for this.
4 days watching.
Yeah. It takes time. Also, you never share that. It's not one. It's not. It takes time to upload data as well.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, definitely.
Great points, by the way.
Thank you, Jean-Pierre, and I hope you will change your plans and come in February, right? We'll see.
I wish I could come. Oh, it sounds so good.
We'll see. Maybe another time.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. I will be coming in 2027. I swear. I have that marked on my calendar and book nothing else on that weekend.
All righty. Take care. And well, you're welcome to stay for the next presentation of Christos.
I can't hear you that properly. Maybe I can watch it some other time. Is it going to be recorded?
Sure.
Yes, we are recording. No problem.
Oh yeah, I'll catch it some other time and see you go around, Christos. I think we met in BalkanDreamin last time.
Yeah, I remember you.
Yeah, nice. All right.
So
Have a
I'll
great
see you again, I guess.
evening, guys. Cheers. Thank you so much, guys.
Cheers. Thanks.
Cheers.
Bye bye.
Have a good night. Bye. All right, I guess I will move over here.
Yeah, I'll just prepare your slides.
Yeah.
Get this one straight because
Can be very dynamic talk for me. All right.
make sure that we can actually see you.
Do you want to share the slides? Multiple times. I can be here. I can move around.
That's okay. Don't worry.
From now, you can use that frame, right?
No, I will just change the.
Because it will be better to see the screen.
It will be basically your slides.
I see.
It's
Right
now.
now,
I have them here.
while I'm waiting, all right, I would like to know the background, all right?
Yeah.
Are you Salesforce developers, or are you consultant, architect, or you are new to the system, or?
Hi,
Yeah,
I'm a solution architect.
solution architect.
Yeah.
Okay, then
For a
so
couple
I
of
can
years.
know at which level I can speak, all right? I have in my mind also that people come with low experience, but since I speak with two architects,
I have a lot of flow experience.
all right, that's good.
Yeah.
Working?
There we go. Let's try. Voilà. There you go.
Okay, all right. So, thank you for the invitation, all right? And I'm always happy to support local communities, all right? I think we need to be straight, but anyway, doesn't matter for me, all right? And I'm glad that there is a user group here in Sofia, and I'm more than welcome to come again. So I'm waiting for another invitation, and hopefully to the Dreaming event that will take place in a few months. What I would like to talk today is, okay, you're a Salesforce consultant, architect, developer. What's the next steps, right? What's going on with our ecosystem? How you can be relevant in 2015, 25, right, and 26, because 25 is finishing, right? That's why you see that. And how you can be up to date, and what's the next step? What's the future? Salesforce dying, it's not, where we should invest, and which clouds. It's okay with the camera.
No, not really. I'm
wait.
trying. That's better.
Yep.
Don't worry, the camera is recording the entire room. Just
All right, let's continue with the next slide just to introduce myself. Unless you have a sticky. So I'm Christos. I started with the Salesforce ecosystem in the last maybe 11, 12 years. It was back then, it was wild west, all right, over here. You're speaking about Salesforce, and now everybody was like, what is that, right? Now it's even better for most countries. I hope it will be for Bulgaria as well, but I'm not sure. Maybe you can tell me how is the Salesforce ecosystem. But I remember when I started, nobody knew. Then I tried to be in the events and other things, and I went to universities, expanded, all right. And I'm leading now the Thessaloniki Greece Salesforce Developer Group. It's quite big, all right. It's the third biggest one in Europe as far as developers. All right. Usually we're gathering around 40 to 50, depends. It depends from the day, this is what I noticed. Or it depends if there's a football match or not.
always.
I can tell you, right? And we're never doing them on Saturdays, all right? So this is what we learn.
Well, last time we had like 30, but to be honest, if you don't try, you don't know.
No, that's fine. Okay. But don't worry, I was leading before the Thessaloniki user group. I'm from Cyprus, so I was leading the Cyprus user group over there. So for a long time, we're gathering usually 4 to 5 to 10 people, the maximum 10, and that's it for a long years, all right? But I got the honor title of Salesforce MVP this year, which is a checkbox for me, all right? It's not that it was one of my goals, but it happens, and I'm really glad that I'm serving the community and everything else. And also, I've studied quite a lot for certifications, all right? I have 25, quite a lot, all right? I'm not telling you get 10 certification in 2 years. Remember, I have 13 years, 11 years on the Salesforce ecosystem. Usually, I'm trying to get 2 or 3 every year, all right?
We have one member, I will not name his name, 55.
55. He's getting 20 certification in 1 year. Usually, he got about that, so I'm prepared to spend time, all right? All right, let's go to the next slide, all right? Just to introduce a little bit. As you can see, I'm quite crazy about Salesforce. Also, I have my family. They're not trailblazers, but because I'm so involved, you can see them little trailblazers. My wife is wearing the hoodie. I'm wearing the trailhead hoodie. So, you know, the whole family is up to that. Let's go to the next slide just to understand it. I'll tell you the story that I want to share, what we have here, right? I brought a few slides from Deloitte, but just 2 slides because it's important to explain something, all right? In the Salesforce ecosystem and generally in the CRMs and the ERPs, there's always a fight.
Can you try to put it up?
Sorry. Okay, maybe you can lower there's always a fight right between them, right? Is 1, 2, 3, okay, it's over here. There are always a fight that you saw that as solution architects, some of you or some consultants. The companies they invest, usually there's 3 years of ERPs, 3 years of CRMs, right? 3 years of back office things. What I mean back office is the ERPs or financial system that usually the customer don't see, and the front office is the Salesforce, is the customer that see, right? So we are transitioning to that, right? So we have the front office era now again, right? That's why we have 3 years or 2 years horrible in Salesforce. It's interesting to see why the trends are great. Then in COVID, because everybody has to invest, we have a great 3 years, and then collapse for 2 years, right? And then now we're getting back to the front office era. The good thing about Salesforce compared to the other partner, right over here, is still the number 1 in sales, marketing, commerce, and service. In the core areas that Salesforce, compared to the competitors, is up to the leaders. And compared to the others, Salesforce has 33% of the market share. It's interesting that the other 5, they just have only 20%, right? So we are still in a good ecosystem. It will continue to grow, but overall, we can go to the next one. Doesn't mean that it will be that same growth as it used to have, but we still have a little future, right? But it's important to see the shift that a lot of money and a lot of from the companies all around the world, we shift from the ERPs to the CRM. Okay, let's go to the next slide and then check something more. Right? Here is the Salesforce ecosystem in the MEA area. Focus mainly on the East Europe because all the times we're talking about on the West, right? So specific, it's very unique talk, all right? That's why I said, okay, where we're focusing. If you see Greece, Turkey, Cyprus, for example, for Salesforce, one geo, it's important to see. I'm not sure if you're talking about sales and everything, but where they focus the areas, right? Med area, I guess Bulgaria is under here, right? The Atlantics. Actually, Bulgaria is somewhere else. It's not in the Atlantics, but it's under Southeast Europe. Over here, it's part of hybrid market. I need to check why, because they have it over there, right? Because that's slide from Salesforce, right? And but it's growing. It's something that is good. It's not something that we are lagging behind. I know we're 10 years behind the West, all right, Europe, because on the West they have everybody has Salesforce. I'm not sure how many companies they have here in Salesforce. Despite the call, everybody has Salesforce, something that they're thinking about the CRMs. It's a question to you. What's the situation?
As users, you mean?
No, not as user. Yeah, as users, for example, companies. It's by default, every big companies they have Salesforce, or but you can think it's part of the growing market that it's good for you, right? Things are moving.
Well, international companies, there are many international companies.
I'm talking about local.
They pure local, basically it's small teams who are doing sales. There's a few manufacturing companies who are using it. But usually I would say maybe like 1 out of 10 would actually consider using Salesforce because the sales culture is very old-fashioned.
But it's changing that, right?
Yeah. So basically, it's part of the evolution. If the company is, let's say, very modern, but there are also some very traditional companies that have been using for a very, very long time. But usually it's an international influence. So if the company is international, there's a good chance that they will at least ask for it. But there are some very advanced IT companies and like gaming. They're just thinking of doing it right now because they're kind of startup mode, you know? Gaming is very dynamic.
Yeah, I know.
So we have a lot of iGaming companies here. So it's very, very specific, but you have to be careful because if you talk about Commerce Cloud, we have one of the biggest, actually,
yeah, you talk about
full of Commerce Cloud experts. So it depends also on which product because historically we have some not pure core platform, but like Commerce Cloud is a marginal.
I was looking at it later on because I have slide because there's a lot of papers over there and I did my research and that's why I'll show today what else is going on over there. But the good thing is Bulgaria and other members from it is growing quite a lot. Poland is the #1 that's growing so it's booming over there, right? But Bulgaria is in a good phase, right? Greece is also in Athens. Thessaloniki is not so good, all right? But you can see there is a future here. It's not that.
I started in 2007.
All right.
Salesforce here, and I brought it to Bulgaria for the first time. And I was working with the VP of Emerging Markets, and he was responsible all the way from South Africa to Russia. And we sold the first license in Romania.
Okay, so
together. It was a media company actually. But this is year 2007.
It's a long time ago, so yeah.
But sometimes you feel like it's still those times, but in some sectors it's very fast. For example, Nexo, one of our local unicorns, basically they are one of the biggest success stories in Asian Force. They are representing a Dreamforce success.
So I was there as well, where we should go.
There are many, you know, in Europe there is this double speed kind of thing. You know, we have very fast companies and very slow companies.
Yeah. Asian Force. Let's go to the next slide just to share about.
It's very popular among the startups and fintech, for example.
Yeah, I know fintech and usually starting that they were around starting with Slack and Tableau and then we go to so it's a different question. Here's another topic that we'll discuss. Usually, when I talk about Salesforce, in my mind, I usually have only the classic Salesforce sales service community, right, experience. But Salesforce the last few years expanded, right? You remember 2006, what things were simple. You sell sales, service, or line. The platform. That's it. Nowadays, you have everything else, right? You can see later on the slide, but you have also
integrations are also very
integration, MuleSoft, right? Informatica now, Data Cloud, Agentforce, Tableau, Slack. So you have to consider all together. So when you're thinking about sales and where we should move, as is broad. I think it's sorry for new people.
We used to have also a lot of BI experts, for example,
On the
pharma, because there's a big pharma technical.
It's pharma, so it's later on where you should focus, right? So but here what it is for the fiscal year 24, right, and here 27, 25, right? It's interesting that where they're saying that it will boom, right? So you can see in our region, all right? Public sector actually is booming, and it's interesting because we have a terrible public sector. I guess the same will apply in Bulgaria. I'm not sure it's good, but usually the public sector is booming here and there, right? Sometimes they still, it will come that way here. But another thing that so is travel, hospitality, right? Is something that they want to invest from Salesforce. And as well, a lot of people that they came at the whole, let's say, movement to support that. That's why they call push of loyalty, all right? Or a hospitality cloud. Even the Agentforce is interesting. The Cora cloud, that is the demo, is about it's our region. Is
Greece.
It's East Europe.
Okay.
All right, is the region that the Salesforce is forecasting where they should invest, right? And for example, healthcare life science is booming, primarily on the West Europe or Switzerland, but it's something that is coming this year, right? Because of you, I'm going to speak about that as well. But technology, usually most technology companies, is not something that they want to invest more in Salesforce, something that most of them they put it already, right? So if you want to get the new industries, focus on the other ones, right? There you go. It's not that technology will not give you money, but the technology is the first ones that know Salesforce the value and they put it. Of course, in some countries, the banking sector or energy utilities, but it depends. But usually, the overall is going on here. Okay, let's go to the next slide. And here you can see even where they should invest, right? For example, Slack is something that is growing. The problem with Slack is great, but even as consultants, I'm not sure how much value we can get because that's the selling point. It's too easy to implement, but how long, right? I'm still wondering, I'm still speaking with others, how much is the implementation cost for a consultancy to implement, right? Yeah. Because for Salesforce making the money, right? But for us, sometimes we have to see, all right, it's worth the value, or I prefer to put an implementation of life science or health cloud or sales service. But you can see which one is growing again. So, but it's interesting that Salesforce platform is growing again, right? So you can see back to the back to the customization, back to the Agentforce, back to the other things that they want. Because out of the box is great, and even Salesforce is changing because from now on, I'm not sure you can say sales marketing. The whole thing will change into industry specific, right? And I will give you an example. Let's go to the next slide. But more than fine if you want to talk about anything else, question for that? Or... Okay. And here all the special expertise and specialization in Salesforce, you know, the classic ones we have the Data Cloud. Forget about Einstein, they killed it this year in report, so that they want to they rename everything, right? Especially this year. This is quite old, just 3 months old, but you know, they name everything Agentforce. But something that I want to point out here that is interesting, you see all that industries products cloud. Here is where Salesforce is heading in combination with Revenue Cloud. Also, Revenue Cloud, right? In combination with that, all right? So what we're taking is, I have a slide is sales service. If you don't have the basics, go and learn them, right? As essential, all right? Experience is essential, especially if you want to become an architect and everything. That's the time. and later on the whole industry, all right, X velocity or only scripts and those kind of things, they want to sell specific industry.
Do you have an example of public sector solutions?
There is a public sector
I'm really
cloud.
surprised by this.
There's a public sector cloud, right, already implemented. All right, usually it started mainly to work in US, UK, but it's coming to the other countries as well. The good thing about that is using the Omni Studio again, right? Somewhere here, right? I have the next slide. If you go over there to the next slide.
It's likely for the Baltic countries they have a pretty good public sector.
Could be, yeah. The public also depends on what you consider public sector. Sometimes the definition. Not only. There's a lot of other things.
There's a lot of work. The interesting thing is sometimes in the past is where your data are saved, and say locally in the cloud. Even back then, that's was the issue, right? As a public sector, it has all the things that is built a specific cloud about something that is still building, right? It just came 2 months ago. Even Salesforce doesn't know how to spell it by selling right yet. Right? You can see here about specific under the industry specific. What are those things? Right? So in the public sector, for example, it gives you it's combined agent. For example, here's one example that I'm seeing in a company, not a company, in a public sector project, right? It has everything that is for sure all the GDPR, IPA, whatever. Okay, they have connected with the agent force, give the ID, it check the system already, and it's built on Studio, all right? And also it's connected also with other, you can connect it with other health cloud and other things as well. Overall, it's something that is still growing, is not mature product yet, but it's something that you can invest, all right? But because the public sector usually is bidding projects, and sometimes if you want a public sector project, then you can have it for 5 years, 3 years. It's something interesting, but you still come to persuade them, right? Another thing that I want to share now is the Viva. It's very important that for those who doesn't know the whole story, Viva in the past, but in case for others in the online, it used to collaborate with Salesforce, so build a CRM for pharmaceuticals. And they told them, okay, they have the monopoly over there, but they told them you have until 27, for example, we're building on new CRM. So either you have to stick with Salesforce or come with us. Now there's a big opportunity here, right? Who's going to get who and why and what, all right? But Salesforce, we built the life science. The life science is very unique. Is the first example, but how all the other industry will follow, because it's combined sales, service, health cloud, under data cloud, under the umbrella of
That's a big presence from IQVIA.
IQVIA, right? So
they're also part of the game.
So you can see it's something that if you want to stay relevant and you want to make money in the ecosystem, public sector, life science, I have to say consumer goods is something that it's great, but it's still relevant, not so much. Financial services has their app as well. Life science is very important, as you can see here, and for our areas, because we are strong in tourism, I can say check that as well, right? The travel, transportation, hospitality, all right? Everything else is good to have, but depends from the sectors, right? That's the need that you need to invest. The problem with those products are still not as mature as sales or service, but they are quite more expensive, but they are very unique. So you're spending time on the implementation, but you have directly solution to the clients, right? So depends. You have to be an industry expert, and that's why one suggestion I will give you is Salesforce is great. We're not sure how long will be Salesforce. I will be for another 25 years. You can learn anything. For example, you can learn WC, you can learn the platform, but at the end of the story, especially if you're speaking with the clients, you need to know the industry. So the more industry experts you are, the more future-proof you have for your work. Because a lot of times you don't speak about Salesforce. You have to connect Salesforce with the ERP, the SAP, the financial system. You have to speak with other people. So you have to know all around the industry. And speaking the language is something that I will truly tell you, learn how to do. Let's go to the next slide. For sure, for Salesforce, it's everything on the agents, right? Agent force, especially now the trend is A2A agents, right? It's something that they're working with, right? And so some demos is working. I'm not sure if it's working with Bulgaria, right? The language. This working. I'm not sure if everyone check it out. For English, it's working just fine. In Greek, for example, they just released it 2 weeks ago because we have innovation days over there. In Bulgaria, for clients, still waiting. I'm not sure, but it's something that we should check it out. But overall, for it depends on the market, all right? They try to do auto translate, all right? I cannot guarantee that it's correct, all right? With Greek, I tested it, but because I'm from Cyprus and I speak the Greek accent, when I try to speak in Greek secret accent, he doesn't understand me. So it's something that we need to improve. It's something that I've written over there. Okay, you have the different accents, all right? Like the UK accent and the American accent.
You mean like speech recognition?
Speech recognition is something that this world are working on. Like I speak to him, and this is the future because I saw a demo that you're making a phone call that is an agent that is talking to you, understand, and you think that's a person. It goes quite well.
This is not gonna work in Bulgarian in the next 3,000 years. Not work.
Maybe, most probably, because they need the handshake, they need to see
No,
that.
we have those accents like
But
55,000.
There's a very strong AI community here, and they actually, I think, wrote a Bulgarian AI model.
Message.
I think the big issue is with the Cyrillics. I don't think there is a lot of investment there.
But
It's the
speech
only
recognition, I think this is quite specific also.
yeah.
But it's something that we'll see, right? It depends. If tomorrow Bulgaria is a emerging market like Poland, for example, pretty sure they can. It's all about money at the end of the day. But it depends. Is also if they find the good model, right? And if you have everything else, and the AI company from such Bulgaria.
Platforms like Salesforce is like a broker for AI. It's not, AI is not in it, right? It's just talking to the model and getting the result.
Yeah, so
if the model is not providing the answer,
I wonder what is with the text recognition. You know, we receive yesterday I received a notification from the parking zone that it will expire soon. And my watch and my headset is like, you have a long message in Croatian. Do you want me to read it? Because it's in Latin, it's written in Latin. Because Croatian and Serbian, I think it's similar to Bulgarian, but they write in Latin. So it's recognized as Croatian. And I was, oh my God! Now I think I have to tell it read it. I can give the command read it to see how it will read it actually. It's going to be in Croatian or in Bulgarian.
it's interesting that kind of for sure. I would like to. I hope you can stay with dinner, right? We can talk about that. All right. No, it's something I want to be interactive, right? It's not that. But I'm thinking usually Salesforce is building from US, maybe UK, Japan is as well, right? I'm not sure how many, but there's still a community over there. And then coming to Europe, all right? So major markets like Italy, France, UK, Spain because of the Spanish. Arabic is a different, the other way around, how you say. But if they make it implement for Greek, then we are in a good area. Right? It's something like coming to Bulgaria as well, right? So we'll see. Let's go to the next slide, all right? Where we're going is, I will talk about, again, agent force. Pretty much you know that is the third wave. I don't want to expand more. Let's go to we used to have predictive copilot and adjusting agents now. Next slide. But what I was telling you before, in the past, it was sales, service, pretty much, maybe marketing, experience. Now it's the other way around. How Salesforce wants to sell things, all right, in the platform. Data cloud, everything. Don't tell them that you can build things without the cloud, right? And agent force without data cloud. But they want to combine together. So data cloud everywhere. You have the customer, all the clouds, right? You have. Don't invest in a few other clouds. Don't invest in CPQ. Invest in Revenue Cloud. CPQ is dead. Have that in mind. Don't invest in Analytics CRM, which I love analytics, but they bought Tableau. It was time if for Salesforce was, okay, we have the best one, what we should do with number 5 and number 6 on analytics, and they said we kill it this year. So don't invest in analytics here, invest in Tableau. Tableau next is coming and back into Salesforce, okay? And the other ones, you can stay with them. One thing that Salesforce is promoting now is the way you should learn the Slack, how you connect it through Salesforce, all right? Because everything they want to give it from there. This is the new wave of Salesforce piece. Instead of having that interaction over there to the website, they want to use Slack interaction from there and move it to Salesforce. Now, the issue here for Salesforce was how many they're using Slack. Not many companies, all right? Most of them, they're still on Teams, all right? So they released 2 weeks ago that feature. So it's very good. Through Teams, you can interact, you can get the data from Salesforce, you can do sales opportunity and other things. So it's something new to learn it, right? And it's a good selling point that is not stopping you, but it's something that you can take it, right?
I think it's just that it's easier to do the Slack in agent mode because it is designed like that. It's more conversational already, but it doesn't mean that Slack is the only place for agent force, right? It's everywhere actually.
That's why
it's going faster because they are able to test and build.
No, last year was only, you can do that only through Slack, but they found around that a lot of clients are still strong on Microsoft, right? You cannot tell them move on Microsoft or move create, you know, the Outlook and Word and everything. So that's why they ended over there, and there's a connection. Question or comment?
I have heard that Microsoft actually are trying to switch from free model for Teams to paid, and this is gonna be very helpful for Slack actually.
It will be, but
maybe
depends how strong it is Microsoft in each area, right? Because in Eastern Europe, at least in Greece, Cyprus, and what I see, Microsoft is strong in that, and it combined it for free. Now, because of the European Union, yes, it was the case that they need to solve and separate it. It depends how Microsoft is selling. If it's selling just $1 per user or 50 cents per user, Slack is $20 per user per month. Depends how. It's all about financial. But for us, we need to learn both ways because we need to be future-proof. Doesn't mean that you learn only how to implement it. But this is how will be the future. I can see the future page layout of Salesforce will be on the standard Salesforce core, that you have the page layout, you have the apps, you have the experience, all right, on the commerce, all right, but also you have the Slack page that you need to edit, all right. So a future-proof admin needs to know all those changes, all right. For us as architect, we need to know how to integrate everything. And consultants, they need to understand what's going on, and hopefully they're a little bit technical so they get correct system requirements. That's another pain point. All right. I think over here you saw that slide again multiple times, so we can go to the next slide, unless you want to talk anything else about that. This again, apps, filters, all right, Hyperforce. Something I want to add here is, in the past it wasn't, but Salesforce has more open models and collaborate with others, all right, AWS. This is mainly for the architects that want to integrate everything. OpenAI and Google, Anthropic, and it's over there, right? In the past, Salesforce was, I'm not sure.
How about N8N? Have you heard of N8N? Basically, there are platforms where you do the entire work outside of Salesforce. So you have a workflow, and it can still speak to Salesforce, but actually the workflow is outside.
Okay.
And N8N is one of the...
Maybe I saw in the past, right?
Basically, you can actually write some intelligence there, some intelligent workflow where it does the smart thinking, let's say, and it can also close, for example. They can talk to each other, and N8N is just orchestrating the workflow, and it can talk to any of the AIs, and then drop something into Salesforce. So
you have the orchestrator also, Salesforce, we have the agent, and when you need
I think this also is a big promise.
This is the future, right? Especially for architects, where you want to go is invest in agents to understand. I'm not talking about only in Salesforce agents. Nowadays, in the Dreamforce, they show how to create agents events.
You should think outside of Salesforce as well, even as a Salesforce admin, because then the AI can tell you what you should do in Salesforce. You can actually analyze it from outside.
You have to, but here what I'm taking in the past, what changed with Salesforce was very my data. I'm not sharing everywhere, I'm not collaborating with anyone. Now change, it has to open, it has to collaborate. Of course, they open MuleSoft and other companies, right? Informatica, now it just closed a week ago. But it's starting to see that it changed all around, and Salesforce is more open than ever. Even lately, you can use the Copilot to develop Salesforce app in Salesforce, and the Copilot, how you call it over there, the agent pipes, all right? This is the name. It can develop in Angular, JavaScript, Vue, in Salesforce for Salesforce. Right? Even change the whole how you develop apps, all right, if you're technical. Let's go to the next slide. So we have autonomous agents. Here you saw that. This is what we're talking about, that agents to agents. The next slide. What I would like to add here is, here's an example of prompt if anyone never saw, all right? What is telling is my name is blah, 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 what I'm doing over here, and then it creates things, right? And it's very important for future, for business analysts, that's why I have that, not for consultants or technical people, to understand even how to do the requirements, to take also the AI.
Generative analysis.
Generative analysis, correct, right? This is the future. That's why I have that slide, because not so much, you know, the architects, they have their minds unique, is very unique, all right? I will kind of speak in the next slides about that. But the business analysts, they need to understand, okay, how can I create something and can be fast, I can even take the requirements. I tested that, right? How you can even write RFPs, how can even write stories correctly, right? Start using the agent force. This is the way you have to work from now on. If you want to be on the market, you have to be fast, you have to, how agents, for example, how AI could help me to be more effective by 30%, by 50%, right? So I can go get more stories, prepare faster. For sure, the client will tell you less money, you will be more competitive.
Nobody's an expert. Nobody has expertise in these things. So it's very new for everyone.
It's very new, but at least, I cannot say about Deloitte, we are working on that.
I mean, you learn by doing it. Finally.
Yeah, it depends how budget we have. For example, some companies, big companies, they have a budget, so they have their own tools. Some other companies, they can catch up maybe 6 months after, because things are moving fast.
I think the biggest issue is to avoid any hallucination, because sometimes AI actually gives you things that don't even exist. So you just need to, it's called rail guards. I mean, just have to find a way to not to let it go crazy.
No, I don't know. That's why some companies they have their own LLMs, all right? And they put them with the correct, even from brand guidelines, how to do RFPs, how to do, and they create agents, they do that. For example, the company I'm working, we have that. I'm not against that only there you can find it. The good thing about all those things is that they can get really cheap very fast and can go to the market for the others that can buy from startup companies that can provide you those things, right? So things are coming and catching up. People who will continue work with the old way, take notes, write things on the paper and everything, that thing will change for sure in the future. Things will be totally different. So we don't have business analysts here, you're more architects, solution architects, but the business analysts, they have to. I'm not sure, talking about only that, even the coding, that's why I have the video later, we can watch it on it, is how you write code with vibe code over there.
Vibe coding is quite advanced actually. Some people are really...
It's advanced.
Doing half of the job.
It can be faster. The issue is that even the new generation of developers, because I'm working with quite a lot, they use so much HTTP and vibe code, and sometimes they don't know the basics, right? If you tell them how to write for loop. So
they're flying before driving.
Yeah, actually on Thursday, we're talking about the developer new features in Thessaloniki user group, and we're talking about what's new on the developer side. Watch out, because yes, it will change, but in what cost and how we need to adapt or write into all that. Let's carry on the end, my thoughts. Let's go to the next slide with the Now, if you're an architect, architects is the thing, so, right? If you want to grow, I'm glad that Salesforce brought it back, right? The architect .salesforce.com.
Yes.
For a weird reason, he said, no, we don't need it anymore. So for a couple of years, buried it, right?
Couple of months.
Years, months, depends, right? They opened it again. So, and also this year, Dreamforce was something good that the demand for architects is really high. If you see also, because I was checking a lot of lately for this talk, other reports from Salesforce Ben, other reports from Garnet and others, I can share later the links, is the demand is still high for Salesforce architect. It didn't fall. Maybe the salary overall changed a little bit lower compared to the golden years of COVID, but we're still in high demand. So people with projects, not just theory projects, but they have good numbers of certifications, they work in big projects, and they're truly architects, something's good. And I'm talking about solution architects and technical architects. So both is not that you're missing, because now you need even more to connect with other ERPs, other even Salesforce, right? So the architects, what I would suggest to them is data cloud, learn the MuleSoft, learn the integrations, and even starting from, you don't need to write the code, all right? But learn all the basic things. It's something that you really need to find out. Even later on, what I like about that website, and I'm checking quite a lot, next slide, is the data models, all right? Especially if you're gonna work with anything, this has to be your butter and bread. You have to go every morning and say, okay, this is everything, you have to copy paste it, you have to remember it in your head and your mind to have clear what's going on, and all the architects do that, right? We can have a bigger talk about the architect mindset and what you need to do, but it's very important, it's one-on-one to know the data models and the overview of what's going on each. And we have a lot of them.
I also like very much, I started working on not the patterns, anti-patterns and patterns, the right way of doing things and wrong way of doing things. There's the whole library. I think it needs a refresh maybe, but there are some parts that I would like to actually work on that from my own experience. There's so much I know that we shouldn't be doing and people keep on doing them. We also need to warn the market that actually some of the designs are always ending up in trouble. People are always following, for example, we have a lot of issues with CPQ. I think it's an architecture problem because they found it so good that there's, let's say, the workflows for certain prices, and they loaded everything with their own customizations. And I think it just collapsed because you're not supposed to go crazy with pricing,
Yeah, twin things are saying hi from CPQ. If you work twin things, the CPQ. But CPQ changed now. They understand that. That's why they rebrand everything to Revenue Cloud, and it has a transformation from
Exactly.
CPQ.
RCA, Revenue Cloud Advanced.
Or they just rebranded something, but it's not for still brick the CPQ. It's something totally new over there. They're rebuilding from the scratch. And the billing over there, yes.
The thing is that actually there is a lot of need for customization, and it's basically if you're going to do customization, then you should just build your own.
It depends. Not every time. What to the comment you said before that sometimes it's wrong. You have to go back even 5 years ago. Back then, the best solution maybe was that one. Now maybe it's not because new features came. This is what I see sometimes, right? I remember an energy utility client that it has 10 years, maybe 11 years implementation. That it started even before the flows, but they built a whole orchestrator of flows back in 2012.
For sure.
So you can see, great idea. It wasn't the best, but back then was the best. They built everything on top of it, right? Now it's too large to migrate or change everything, but back then was the best solution, right? All right, for architects, we can talk about other things. What you need to still study. You need to get approval from your wives or husband that you need to study, all right? Another tip. And for sure, if you're going for the CTA, you need to pay attention quite a lot to your personal sacrifices, all right? Because if you want to reach that level, you need to get 3 approvals. Your boss, all right, the company that will pay, because usually it's the training cost and the cost of the exam. Usually, most people pay the first time. The second time is the second approval you need to get is from you, because you have to accept that I will sacrifice my holidays because I will study. I will sacrifice my free time because I will study. And the third approval is from other half, because they accept that you will missing them, right? And you are taking their time to be part of the CTA. But CTA, I'm not sure if it's so hot topic nowadays. It used to be 5, 6 years ago. Now it's more solution architects and other things. We still have CTAs, but it's something is moving. This is what I'm not sure what is your opinion.
I think in our market, the demand is very high for mid-level people anyway, so there's no incentive to push yourself that far.
For here in Bulgaria and Greece, I don't think so, unless you work international projects, all right? But I'm talking about overall the CTA movement, what's going on.
Even if you
I think CTA is mostly very advanced developer skill.
Yeah.
Basically, for solution architect, it's enough work. I mean, there's enough good projects and clients.
Yeah, what I can suggest here is take the pyramid if you want to become an architect. I'm always telling everyone, start with the admin and a builder, take the 3 consultant certifications, sales, service, and experience, and then go for the application architect or system architect. And then, if you're going to go for the B2B solution architect,
I think you should have also 10 years of experience.
no, you have experience.
At the same time.
For sure, that is the guarantee. I'm not going to tell you that.
We have architects that are working for 3 years. I think that's.
No, they're not architects. They are on paper architects, right? They're fake. You need to have the
Fake, but they just don't have a variety of industries also, because I think you can be an architect in health cloud 10 years and you know nothing about, let's say, media clouds. I think that doesn't make sense. It should be a bit more umbrella architect. I think should know about all the industries as well.
That certification, the B2B architect.
Yeah.
I have I'm not sure if it's
B2B solution.
yeah, B2B. You have it as well.
I said to Vasily like 5 years ago, you have to go for B2T architect anyways.
no B2C.
B2B has the marketing, all right? Is personal. You're expert on that.
So I said that's the ultimate architect. It's the most important one.
Before, if you say the CTA is the bigger one, then the B2B or B2C architect as because they need to.
But I'll never get to CTA because I will never code. I don't need to code. I will never get there.
We don't need to. It's other things. It depends.
It's not the developer one without coding.
Okay.
I did want to take the application architect.
All right. We can speak about dev, right? In my last slide is about developing because I want to show and my thoughts on that, right? But in order, I think you don't need to be an architect if you know the industry. This is where we're heading. It's good to know the life science, and maybe Salesforce will change the certification in the future to have industry-specific certification. What we have now is accreditations, which are great. I had a lot. I had around 10. But I hear Salesforce that out of nowhere they tell you, you're tired of it. So
Not very encouraging.
no, it's only for partners. If you're a partner, and they cost quite a lot, 150 euros each. I got around 10, and 8 of them expired. All right, the last 5 years, which I spent time, I studied. It was hard. Some of them was even harder than the Salesforce certifications. I don't know where is, I had all the Einstein certificate accreditations. It's something that is industry specific, all right? For example, usually it's there, industry specific, but it's something that will come here, right? That's why we have now I think the latest certification is more about Omni Studio, but around public sector or non-public sector, about more specific area, right? I'm not sure, but they announced 2 weeks ago something specific for industry specific. But it's where I can see the Salesforce certification will move. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Now, here what I have is a video. Maybe this is where here. So, have you saw the vibe code of agent vibes? Did you check it? All right. Even if you don't know how to code, Maybe we can play some music.
Say goodbye to manual tasks, endless boilerplate, and the long road from ideation to delivery. Say hello to building at the speed of imagination. This is Agentforce Vibes. The journey starts here in a secure Salesforce sandbox where developers can innovate without risk. Instead of hunting through boards, see how the developer simply asks Agentforce, their AI powered coding partner, for their assigned tasks. Agentforce retrieves the work item from DevOps Center and checks out the correct branch. With the environment ready in seconds, the focus shifts from setup to solution. This isn't just about generating code, it's about translating a business need into a working feature. The developer describes what they want to build, and watch this. Agentforce instantly generates a comprehensive development plan. Every detail is mapped out. With the plan approved, the build begins. Agentforce automatically generates the Apex controller with methods to fetch reviews, calculate averages, and count totals. It then creates the matching test class to validate those methods and builds out the Lightning Web component to display the reviews, ratings, and sorting options. This is the foundation of the feature. Work that normally takes hours, now complete in seconds. But development is rarely a straight line. Here, the developer refines the approach, asking the agent to add a star rating widget so each review is visually scored at a glance. Notice how Agentforce doesn't just drop in a widget, it understands the context and instantly updates both the Apex controller and the user interface to support it. Now, with the feature refined, it's time to guarantee quality. Agentforce runs the test cases and performs a full analysis to ensure everything works as expected. This is the critical step, a seamless loop of creation and validation that ensures quality and security are built in from the start, not added after the fact. With a clean build, it's time to see the feature in action. Behind the scenes, MCP servers handle the orchestration, so with a single command, the work is deployed directly to the sandbox. And there it is. What began as a simple request is now a fully functional, tested, and secure feature deployed to a test environment and ready for feedback. Once validated, the work is committed for review, and with approval, promoted by Agentforce all the way to production. This is a new way to build, fast, intelligent, and secure by design. The future of development is here. This is Agentforce Vibes.
So in this case, you don't need the VS Code, the deployment strategy, that's a whole new thing.
You don't have
Happening on the inside.
You can have them if you want, right? You can't leave them because there is a plugins over there, and there's a copilot. It depends on companies. Some companies that have their own that they can use it, the API Agentforce, but I tested it. It's working most of the times. But now it makes me think, what is the future developer that we have, right? Because for sure you need developers that know and understand the developing, all right, and how to write Apex, LWC. But the future, if I can see a developer now that will give you requirements as an architect or business analyst, that finish that in X amount of time. The classic developer nowadays, it will finish it, and you can say a good developer is writing everything perfect and will finish it in 3 days. In the future, a not good developer, it will write a better agent that it will create a code for him, will put it to production. Now, food for thought for the ones that are working with developers or overall, right? What we should charge the clients or in the future? What second is important? Should we charge them Mondays or tokens? Food for thought, because it's something that will adapt in the future, because we can have even a hybrid way of charging the client, because you can tell him, here's your Mondays, but because I'm saving Mondays through the AI, these are the X tokens that I have to use, so I need to charge you for that. That's it. All right. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Christos. Thank you. Wow. You answered the question.